punching up, not down.
It's 7 after 8.
This is the
Let's get
situation.
into the third hour of the Situation Room. How are you doing? Happy post-Valentine. It's the 15th day of... Yeah, it's there. It's a thing.
Okay.
There are people who are just sitting there thinking, what happened? What happened? Oh my goodness. Was I awake?
It will be fine.
Was that me? Others are like, Yani.
Unaweza kunifanyia hivyo.
Yani nilikuwa nadhani.
I thought I was here.
Kumbe.
I'm nowhere.
What? Tumeachia Mungu. Okay, in the next hour, let's talk about what's happening in Africa in terms of peace, conflict resolution, and everything else. We're joined by Dr. Edgar Githua. He is an international relations, peace and conflict researcher, security analyst. He's here with us. Good morning, Dr. Ari.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, Ndu. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Oh yeah, this is really a hot seat.
Kabisa.
Yeah, kabisa.
Now we'll be talking about private military contractors in Africa and the effect of having such groupings in the continent. Let's first of all talk about moving money in the continent, legitimately, legally. EcoBank.
On a platform that works, EcoBank, with 35 markets across Africa, has over 14,000 employees. It's very interesting to hear about a single platform that delivers around the continent and making it possible for you to move money from one country to another, to be able to get things done in one country just as you would in another. So it's a better way to transact. It's a better way to bank. It's a better Africa with EcoBank.
Kabisa, Senior. Actually, CT is not here. He is a bit busy attending to very, very important matters. But he'll be back. But he left me with the day's proverb, and he told me when Dr. Githua comes, please give him the proverb. Tell him to give you an interpretation of that proverb. And the proverbs this week are from Angola. Today's proverb: you cannot do without water, even if it drowned your child.
It's a deep one. It's a very deep one. Yeah, I mean, water is life. That's what they say. Water is life. Without water, it forms the basic building block. I mean, a human body can survive even up to, let's say, 7 days without food, but you can't go indefinitely without water. So you need water for plants, you need water for life. Basically, water it's everything. So yeah, I can feel what the Angolans were thinking about.
What do you think the deeper meaning is?
Sometimes, even when you've gone through, I mean, you're okay, granted it's a very sad situation, your child drowns in this water, but it doesn't mean that you're ever going to keep on blaming those kind of situations and saying, because I had a bad experience with this, that I'm not going to ever rely on it ever again. So I'm just thinking, you'll never say you'll not go to the river to fetch water because that's where your child died. So sometimes you have to move past some particular trauma in life to be able to just get to the next level. Yeah.
So
that's my interpretation of it. I'm just trying to...
As CT would tell you, you can never be wrong. It's your own interpretation.
I get you.
Yours is always right.
I hear you.
It's your perspective on how you view it, and that's an interesting one, the way you've put it.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, we've seen many conflicts on this continent of Africa. Many, even from where our proverbs are coming from, Angola. For many years, they were in conflict. Namibia, the neighbor, they were in conflict. Currently, West Africa, conflict. Central Africa, conflict. East Africa and the Horn of Africa, conflict. The North, we have seen conflicts. Basically, Africa, there keeps, we just keep hearing of conflict here and there, armed conflict. And in many of these cases, we usually hear of some external players, either pulling the strings from afar or even having boots on the ground and actually manipulating the outcome of this conflict. In some cases, it's not even an armed conflict, but it's a political situation that's being managed by some foreign boots on the ground. There was a recent election in an African country where there was a whole allegation that a foreign country had some boots on the ground that were doing a lot of things and managing that election towards a desired outcome. Private military contractors.
Correct.
Otherwise known as?
PMCs.
Otherwise known as?
PMCs.
What are they?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Eric. Private military contractors are basically, their composition is of mercenaries, ex-military soldiers from various nationalities, but the business model around them is that these are hired guns, outsourced to just go and, some of them provide security, and others to just commit other nefarious and illegal activities in other countries. And like you've rightly put it, some are used to subvert election outcomes. Some are used to entrench foreign interests in our in the mineral sector of Africa. So they are what you want them to be. They are your hired guns for whatever you want to be. But ideally, they package themselves as security consultants. Some of them, especially when you had the piracy issue at the Gulf of Aden for the longest time, some of them package themselves as the alternative that is going to help, safeguard those shipping lanes and to help avoid, beat up the piracy and try and reduce the piracy and all that. So to an extent, you'd look at it, the business model they come in or the psychology they bring in is that we are providing security, what governments cannot provide. We're willing to take risks that governments are not willing to expose their own militaries to. But like you said, now that is a very gray area that gets abused. And for the conflicts that you mentioned in Africa, we are increasingly seeing that the business model they're taking on in Africa is not just to provide security. They have a hidden agenda as well. Yeah.
For a very long time, the word that's been used here is mercenaries.
Yeah, that's
and then mercenaries has been with a negative slant.
Yeah.
Private military contractor sounds, legitimate,
exactly.
legal, and proper with the front office and the secretary and a boardroom. Are they legal?
Now, to the extent when they form and have offices and actually give you a contract and tell you on our roster we have legitimate soldiers who retired from the military and they are honorable, they sound like a legitimate outfit and they are legal. In fact, the creation of PMCs, they are legal outside there. It is what, either in their desperation to look for finances, it is what they end up now doing to sustain themselves, because not all, they can't get jobs all over the world. They can't, it's not something that you just wake up and outsource very quickly. It is these extra things that they're trying to do to remain relevant that are now creating a problem. When they now start offering their services to the highest bidder for all acts, nefarious acts, illegal activities, that is where now the illegality starts showing up here.
Who's hiring these folks? Because obviously there's supply, there's demand.
Yeah.
Right? Willing buyer, willing seller.
Yeah.
They wouldn't exist if somebody or certain parties were not engaging them.
Exactly.
So who's engaging them?
Number one, big shipping companies, especially because of the situation of the piracy for the longest time when it was actually at the height of piracy. So the owners of these big shipping lines decided, you know what, we need to safeguard our cargo. We need to just safeguard our ships as they go through the Gulf of Aden. So that is one person. Two, illegitimate governments all over the world, but now especially in Africa. People who've come to power through the back door and want to hold on and to cling on to power, and they feel their own militaries, their own police forces will not be able to assist them to do that. Dictators and strongmen who want to once again just hold on to power. Those are the people who are giving them this kind of jobs.
They want to hold on to power, but then if let's look at it from a nation state point of view. Somebody wants to hold on to power, engaging a PMC.
Yes.
But they also have control of defense forces, they have control of army, they have control of military. So what would a PMC then invited into a conflict be able to achieve that defense forces or military or whomever else, security forces would not be able to achieve?
Let's take the Sahel region, which is a very good place to look at when you're answering that question. France, for the longest time in the Western African bloc of countries that it had control over, engineered it such that the militaries of those countries were not very well equipped or did not have the capacity to deal with certain problems, such that these countries would always need French forces, French boots on the ground to coexist with their militaries. So you find this engineered failure, and especially in the West African, the Sahel region, the West African, the French bloc. So those militaries were not able to deal with certain problems. So when insurgents started coming up, the collapse of Libya, the rise of the jihadist movements in the Sahel region, overwhelmed those militaries of that region. So you find countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger are fighting jihadists. They have their own standing militaries, but they are not well equipped. They don't have the requisite training. The jihadists appear to be even more trained than them and better equipped. So what do these governments do? Quickly look for someone to help them. But instead of looking towards ECOMOG or ECOWAS to assist, they decide, you know what, let's try and get these people who are going to, we are going to cut an underhand, under the table deal, getting the PMCs to help us. You know, it's easier to pay them, give them a gold mine or two, give them some resources or two, they'll take care of your security. So that is the model that's been working. So it is not that these African governments do not have their own militaries. They have their own militaries, but they do not have the capacity.
Who makes up these groups?
The PMCs? The PMCs are, number one, let's take the Wagner Group, for example. It is formed around 2014. Their objective is to help fight in the Crimea region, the Donbass region. And where do you get the people from? You recruit from ex-military soldiers, ideally Russian from the Balkan states, prisoners, we've been made to believe. And also, we also recruit from many other militaries. People like even Kenya, let me dare say, even Kenyan soldiers who've retired from the Kenyan military, some of them have ended up working for PMCs in Iraq at the height of when the US was in the Iraq. There were Kenyan soldiers working there as PMCs with the legit salaries and all that. But then what you do, some PMCs are legit in the sense that they do background checks on who they bring on board. These have to be honorably discharged soldiers who have retired from legitimate militaries. But then if you look at groups like the Wagner Group, I mean, if they can go there, recruit from prisons, that tells you already the caliber and the mindset of the kind of soldier they will have on the ground in whichever part they are in Africa.
I'm still stuck at they're hired by governments.
Yes.
And in some cases, private companies.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
When a government is recruiting an external force to come and offer some security service, what does it call it?
Thank you. They will say we are getting, and they will say we are getting trainers. All right? They will have to legitimize it. Because no government in the world wants to ultimately declare or admit that we are ceding our sovereignty. And remember, security and defense is a core function and a core output of sovereignty. No government outside there wants to say that we have been unable to take care of our own security situation. So they will say we are getting trainers from whichever part of the world to come and bolster our military, come and help increase our expertise, come and just train our soldiers and our battalion commanders on new tactics, or we're bringing them so they can help us understand this new equipment we've brought from this country. They're helping us to now learn how to utilize this equipment.
Okay.
So on that, guys, you'll hear first 100 trainers have come on ground, 200 come in, and before long, you know it, a whole contingent of 1,000 soldiers
are operating in the ground.
Operating in your soil.
Are they operating within the established legal framework of that country?
Yes.
Or are they given a free hand? Or does the government tell them, okay, you can go and clear that area of all those nonsensical nuisance of people?
Exactly. So,
and we shall assume that, they died by natural causes.
I like the way you've put it. Ideally, there is what is on paper. They've come in to train our soldiers and build capacity, teach us how to use weapons, teach us how to use this advanced equipment we've bought. But then when the jihadists attack or during an operation, they will be told, oh, we are using these extra trainers. We use them to go and help fight the jihadists. And so the government sanitizes that by saying, we were fighting rebels.
Okay.
Yeah. So the PMCs were around and they helped us to fight the rebels. And that kind of sanitizes their image and what they're doing in the country. Now, the problem comes in their continued usage and how are you going to keep them there? How are you going to pay them? That's where now you start now. There are very gray areas about who is funding them. How are you going to fund them?
So, Dr. Githua, you see, it begins with the government designating one group of people as a proscribed group.
Yes.
You've called them jihadists, you've called them guerrillas, you've called them
Rebels,
you've called them whatever. It's a government that basically says, you people in that corner, I'm going to call you rebels from this day on.
Correct.
And I need to deal with you militarily.
Yes.
And I need to use, when I'm saying militarily, that means I'm using not the conventional security, I'm going a notch higher.
Yes.
And I shall even bring in a group of people that will sort you out, protect these good citizens from you bad elements. Internationally, how is this recognized?
Now,
does the international law recognize the government's designation of a certain group of people as rebels, as whatever, as unwanted? And does the international law recognize the use of extra personnel who are not in the formal military structure to deal with an internal security problem?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very good question. Number one, all countries have their own sovereignty. So when they are dealing with an internal matter and they feel they are overwhelmed, so long as it is the legitimate government that asks for outside help, it is recognized under international law. What is going to happen now that you've come into the purview of international law, it will not be Kenya asking the PMC directly to come. It will be Kenya asking a particular country to come and aid us. Now, what that country sends to us, this is now the gray area now. What that other country sends to us do not have to be their defense forces to come and assist, because you're allowed under international law to seek for help from whoever you want to help, so long as you're a legitimate government. You've been unable to contain particular elements within your country.
Yeah.
Where the problem now occurs with some of these things is that in the regional security architecture of most countries, for example, let's take West Africa. Any security issue that a country in West Africa is unable to deal with, the people they should be looking forward to is one, the African Union, and two, ECOWAS. And ECOWAS has a military force called ECOMOG. ECOMOG can come in. So you would expect, if this deal is above board,
which is basically the member states of ECOWAS contributing
their troops.
formal military troops into a team that goes there with a proper structure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just like Kenya sending soldiers to Somalia under the AMISOM.
Yes.
So we are helping Somalia deal with its problems, but we are already covered by the security architecture and international law.
Yeah. Which is supported by some resolution of the African Union.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the question and where we find all these issues coming up is, why aren't these West African states not asking ECOMOG to assist? It's because, number one, they know even their legitimacy in power is under question. Remember, some of these countries, the current leaders are in power because of coups. They have come in and overthrown legitimate democratic governments.
Okay.
Yeah. So now, now that kind of ties their hands from going to ECOWAS to ask for help, because ECOWAS will first of all tell them, number one, we do not recognize you as the legitimate leadership of that country.
Yeah.
Return Bazoum to power, return all these other leaders you've overthrown into power, then we will sort out your security issues. They do not want to do that.
Okay.
These illegitimate leaders who are in power, no. We can only now turn to this black gray area, the PMCs, to come and take care of our security problems. So, and the PMCs know you're in a catch-22. You do not have the legitimacy to fall back on the African Union. You don't have the legitimacy to ask ECOWAS for help. So we are your only option. So when the PMCs come to negotiate with you, even the terms and conditions, even though we do not see the contracts and what they agree, that is why now they go into the mining sector, start picking up all these things. And those West African countries will do nothing but they will get the security they're looking for, quote unquote, but they'll be taken advantage of by these PMCs.
It appears to me that there's an issue of power.
Yes.
Those nations that have power will not use PMCs within their own soil.
There you go.
They will use PMCs externally.
Exactly.
America showed us a very good example of this.
Yeah.
In Iraq.
Exactly.
They had several PMCs.
Yeah.
One of them is Blackwater. And we know the scandal that came out of Blackwater and its operations in Iraq.
Yeah.
We have boots on the ground as America. Then we also have other boots on the ground who are helping our boots on the ground in doing some, small things like opening gates and shooting one or two people. That relationship between this country that has boots on the ground, whose taxpayer is financing the boots on the ground, and whose taxpayer is also financing this other private security contractor. What is that? That's I'm stuck on trying to understand this.
Yeah.
Because before we call them, mercenaries, and we assume, that company X wanted to go and acquire some mines, and so they just brought in some ragtag militia and used them. We have seen countries that are properly paying these people.
Yeah. I want you to think about it this way. Imagine you have a business. You have an enterprise, and your core business is to manufacture, or is whatever it is that you do. Let me take Standard Group decides, for example, our core business is news production, and that's our core business.
Yep.
Now, the cleaning services, if we hire our own cleaners, we're going to pay them insurance. Our overheads are going to be quite high. We'll pay them insurance, we'll pay them these benefits, pension and everything. Why don't we subcontract? Why don't we outsource our cleaning services? Then we outsource the guards who take care of the premises to be opening the doors and all that. So think about it in that model.
Business process outsourcing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we are like, we want to just hire journalists and presenters and anchors to do what they do.
Yeah.
Because that's our core business.
Yeah.
The cleaning of the building, the security of the building, and these other small things, we will outsource that to expert people. That is now what the US does. So it wants, number one, when you subcontract, when you hire the PMC is involved in paying its own soldiers, their salaries, their pensions, their compensations if they get killed in the line of duty. Then the core American soldiers are going to be just left to doing the core business, and then you minimize loss of lives of your own soldiers because you're going to get backlash from your citizens back at home. And even your taxpayers will not be complaining too much that why you're allowing our soldiers to die. But when you now subcontract the PMC, they take on those extra risks for you. That is when it is done legitimately. Yeah, that's when it's done legitimately.
That was going to be my question, because then obviously there's a caveat to that, and saying that when it is done legitimately, in what instances then is it not done legitimately?
What's not done legitimately is now what we are seeing the Wagner Group doing in the Sahel region, in that area. I'll give you an example of Central African Republic. It is the government, the sitting president who was losing power, who invited them in to come and provide security, bolster his security, and quote unquote help him to hold on to power. And so from 2017, they've been in CAR mining gold. There's a big mine called Ndasima. It's a gold mine there. They've been really doing a lot of things. They've been accused of many atrocities around there. So you find, if you go to clips of the presidential election that was just done by the president, his bodyguards are PMCs. Not his own army, not his own soldiers. Showing you that he has now actually legitimately brought them on to, I don't know whether the word to use is to supplement his security or to intimidate his opponents, that now I have this extra muscle on my side. And they kind of, quote unquote, like Eric said at the beginning of the program, they kind of managed the election, helped to manage the election, and lo and behold, the guy is in power.
Has there been any issue raised at the African Union at the UN level?
People have complained. Opposition leaders there have complained, but they've been clamped down on. This is now where you begin to see the connection between PMCs and the suppression of democracy, because now they're subverting the will of the people and being used to clamp down on any dissenting voices. But now you've rightly raised it. The African Union, things are raised. The African Union is slow. Why? It has a principle of non-interference in individual member states and their politics. So we kind of look like it kind of looks like the African Union shoots itself in the foot, because by this clause of non-interference, even when African democracy on the African continent is on a gradual decline, it doesn't speak up, it doesn't do anything about it. because it could pronounce itself. The African Union has a Peace and Security Committee. It could actually say, bring it and make it an agenda and say, why don't we raise our force to go and, instead of the Central African Republic relying on this PMCs, why don't we send a force there to just take care of the security situation? That is where we find ourselves.
Let's take a break and then we continue this conversation shortly. Dr. Edgar Githua is an international relations, peace and conflict researcher and also a security analyst. He's our guest. We are talking about private military contractors, aka mercenaries, on our African continent. The danger this is posing to democracy. What's the genesis of all this? And where is it heading? Reminding you that the Pan-African Bank, where you do legitimate business, is EcoBank. How many countries?
35 countries in Africa, 4 out of Africa. And that's great because it doesn't matter where you are. You just carry on where you left off. How you were transacting your, payments, bills here and there. If you were in Nairobi today or Kigali tomorrow, you wouldn't have to close your account and then go to another. You would just carry on your business. And that's what it does mean to be truly using a Pan-African bank to do your business. And there's been a better way to do business for a better Africa.
Better way, better Africa. They say we are not a group of banks under the EcoBank group. We are a banking group. One bank across all those 34 countries. Back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Introducing Maramoja Transport, your trusted ride-hailing companion for a safer journey. Spot your ride easily. We provide clear information about your car so you're never left guessing. Your safety is our priority. Start your journey with an OTP code for added security.
During weekends, we do like a grill in a come-together like sort of party. It's a community event, so people have to eat and have their bellies full.
Hello, Team Club Kiboko. Are you ready for interesting discoveries? Let it go, let it go. Buckle up, kids. It's time for learning.
Playing a drone is, the feeling is awesome.
Showcasing talent. And having a lot of fun while at it. Don't miss the excitement every Saturday from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. See you there!
33, while Malindi will see highs of 33. It's currently sunny at 30. It's 23 and sunny in Kisumu with highs of 29, while Kakamega is cloudy at 21 and will go to highs of 30. Out in Kampala, the rain continues at 21 with highs of 27, while it's sunny at 28 in Dar es Salaam, going to highs of 33. Johannesburg is sunny at 19 and Mogadishu is sunny at 29 with cloudy conditions at 16 in Addis Ababa. It's clear in Lagos at 27 and sunny in Kinshasa at 24. So the road is busy with traffic. It's spilling over towards Landis. It's not been like that for a while, but we're seeing it heavy then getting out towards Kamkunji at the roundabout and then on to Haile Selassie. As you come off Survey on the Thika Superhighway, it's busy going towards the fork in the road, going towards Wangari Maathai or Muranga Road. But for now, doesn't look too bad. I think you'll make the split and you'll be fine. Most traffic everywhere else seems to be dulling down. The Southern Bypass has been good all morning. Might want to take advantage of that. And on Outer Ring, some traffic heading out towards the Thika Superhighway. It's coming in from North Airport Road, which comes off Cabanas. I think we'll be fine getting out of traffic hour in a short while, but we'll have a look at how that progresses as we get closer to that time. We'll talk on Spice FM KE on X hashtag The Situation Room.
intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
22 minutes to 9. Our conversation with Dr. Edgar Githua continues. We are talking about private military contractors, as they are now formally known. In other places and other jurisdictions and other circumstances, they acquire different names. There would be mercenaries.
Yeah.
The late Robert Mugabe accused some people of hiring mercenaries too, and he arrested some of them at the airport in Ethiopia on their way to go and destabilize some neighboring friendly African countries. They used to destabilize countries. Mercenaries are hired to come and destabilize a country.
Yeah.
Or private military contractors are hired to come and stabilize and offer security. Others are called militia. The Janjaweed militia were killing people in Darfur. And who hired them? Oh, they have connections with the government of Sudan and all this and the other. It's one and the same thing we're talking about, isn't it? It's something that is outside what is legally recognized as a security system, either police or military.
Yeah.
This is something extra.
Yeah, it is extra, and I like the way you're putting it there. And they only come in to deal with security issues. They don't come in to deal with anything else. Now, you mentioned the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed eventually transformed themselves into the RSF, Rapid Support Forces, under President Bashir. And the current leader right now is General Dagalo. And now you can see what is happening in Sudan. So RSF are fighting the mainstream military under General Burhan. And there you go. So the PMC became legitimized, and now it is a problem in Sudan as a country. And there have also been, especially in Sudan, if we take Sudan as a case study, Dagalo has worked very closely with the Wagner Group in the gold industry. So, extracting gold. The Wagner Group has been in Libya helping Khalifa Haftar, who is a friend of Dagalo. So you realize that these PMCs come and kind of get referrals. If they've helped so-and-so, he will refer them to somebody else. Oh, I know of a guy, literally. And so their CV spreads, and they just keep on entrenching themselves. And before long, they have just entrenched themselves in a particular part of the world. And now once they get entrenched, removing them becomes a Herculean task. That is the biggest danger that faces the African continent or anywhere else that they get entrenched. Once they get there, they open legitimate businesses to now get into the extractive industry. Now we are mining gold, we are mining diamonds, we're doing whatever else, but it's the PMCs who have come. In the Sudan case study, it is PMCs from the Wagner Group who now protect Russian legitimate gold mining companies. So they were brought on board as security to protect the gold mines and to protect the gold mining company. But then now when a conflict occurs, because they are skilled differently, they're just given leeway to help somebody. So it's a very gray area. It's a very, very tricky place, and it's building and creating a problem that is going to, if not taken care of, will spiral out of control.
But it sounds like, the current news cycle is only talking about the Wagner Group as if it's the most evil PMC that's ever existed. Is it? Do we hear of private military contractors from the West operating outside of the West or in other countries in the West and causing the same issues, where they're used as an extractive force for raw materials, or are they used to destabilize countries, or they're used to, subvert the will of the people in democracies?
I'll talk of the other one that probably is a bit more famous than the Wagner Group. The Wagner Group, of course, has been painted in bad light for all those reasons. We're talking about Blackwater is the next big PMC that the world knows all over, recruiting soldiers from all over the world. Their involvement in Iraq, of course, and in Afghanistan has come up under scrutiny because of violations of human rights and all those extra things which they did, the use of extra force. Under international law, PMCs, and where they really are scrutinized, is in what we call an international humanitarian law. There's something we call the non-international armed conflicts. So in non-international armed conflicts, PMCs are supposed to be regulated and to uphold humanitarian law. Meaning,
Who regulates them?
that's the thing. I was coming to that. It is expected that all militia, even if they are PMCs, anybody who is in a non-international armed conflict is going to obey the Geneva protocols that talk about they should not harm civilians, they should not harm innocent women and children, they should not harm people who are not military combatants. So you find the world, in its attempt to regulate PMCs, has tried to tell them, even if you are going in to fight, obey the laws of conflict.
So then they are recognized.
There is that recognition.
So they because if you're going to ask for some kind of regulation of something, then
Yeah.
there's a recognition
Yeah.
that they exist, number one, and that they will be used from time to time. But I'm still finding it very difficult to color them, these groups, as ones that can be used legitimately, regardless of whether they're recognized or not.
Yeah.
That if they're held up to any kind of, interrogation, if they're held up to any kind of scrutiny, that would they be able to check all the boxes and say, actually, you know what, in use between side A and side 1, that we employed or that we invited the engagement of PMCs, and if it were to go to any kind of conflict interrogator, like ICC, would we then be able to say that actually, you know what, we were operating within the lines of international law?
Now, there's something interesting and tricky you have brought up. Why PMCs are popular? We all know they come from particular countries, but guess what? There is plausible deniability. All those governments they come from will say we did not send them there. Yeah, they do not belong to us.
Yeah.
They are private business enterprises. However,
And nobody can say we hired them.
exactly. However, international humanitarian law will hold them accountable because when they go into a theater of conflict, they are supposed to now not harm women and children. They're not supposed to cause all these violations that they're being accused of. Meaning, if they are caught, they can be tried in a court of law in that jurisdiction or anywhere else, or even taken to The Hague.
Answering as individuals or
Answering as
proxies
individuals.
to states?
Exactly. Answering as individuals, the soldiers you catch committing atrocities,
Okay.
those ones can be tried and jailed. All right. Of course, they will say, their company will deny that it told them. It will say, we told them to just go and do these extra things they did on their own. This plausible deniability, this gray area, is where now all these atrocities and all this haywire and havoc is being wreaked. Because the US is not going to say it sent Blackwater anywhere. Russia will not say it sent Wagner Group anywhere. And now they've been rebranded. They're being called the Africa Corps. Yeah, the Africa Corps. So nobody is going to come out outrightly and say, we sent and they are under our jurisdiction, so we take responsibility for what they are doing outside. That is the gray area we are dealing with here.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about a compromise on democracy. What exactly do we say here? That if we see that the engagement of PMCs, whether we're talking about internal armed conflicts, it's also used in international armed conflict. They are.
Yeah.
That they are an affront to democracy.
Yeah.
How exactly?
They're an affront to democracy because, number one, using clear case studies. Let's take Burkina Faso. They were supposed to hold their elections. But last year, September, October, Captain Traore, who's in charge, he said he suspended those elections indefinitely. Why did he do it? Of course, now his agenda, he said he was only inside there for a transition, but now his agenda is to hold on to power. And now he's brought in some few PMCs to help him. Number one, deal with the jihadists. That's the excuse. I am still containing the security within the country. He's not using his own military. He's using his military plus Russian PMCs, the Wagner Group. When they legitimately help him to hold on to power in the name of fighting jihadists, he is suppressing the will of the people. Democratic elections are not going to be held within the timeline. Same case for Mali, for Niger. These PMCs are going to help entrench people in power who are legitimately do not hold are not the choice of the people of those countries. That is how indirectly their presence and their activities help suppress democracy. And then on the other side, if you want to look at it, if you want to look also at the bigger picture, they embolden impunity. Because let's look at all these leaders who've come into power using coups, or the ones who are holding on to power
Yeah.
And they don't want to leave power. Like, for example, the Central Africa Republic president, when he brings them and they are seen on his campaign trail, intimidating the opposition, intimidating his opponents, it means people start getting afraid that if we oppose this president, these Russian soldiers, these PMCs, there will be repercussions for us. So that is their direct involvement in suppressing democracy, in subverting the will. And for Central African Republic, which is a good classic case study, the rumors that they interfered with the election. Yeah. The rumors that they interfered with that election. That means already they subverted the will of the people in that country.
You know what it is? It really does appear, Doc, and I think this is one of the things that we see around the world, especially when we're dealing with armed conflict, is that everybody knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that they can play just on the edge.
Exactly.
Or on that edge of legitimacy. You know, so there's grey water, and that's the water you choose to swim in. Everybody knows what's going on. Nobody is calling a dog by its name so that you can be safe in one way or another. But then you play just at the edge whereby you're not causing anything huge in terms of damage, but that there is a possibility something else could happen. And then when we talk about subverting the will of the people, it could be neither here or there. Because somebody would say, well, this was in my attempt to actually protect the will of the people.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's really ambiguous, because what mechanisms are in place today? Because it's still very hard for me, I think for many people, to grasp that groups like this are legitimate. We know and we hear of the things that they've been used to do. So to be able to call groups like this legitimate and even advocate for their use is then very difficult. But it seems as though there is a lack of will to then stand up as an international community and say, these ought to be outlawed. If you do agree to use them, you will then face repercussions according to international humanitarian law.
You've caught it. You've hit the nail on the head. This is a creation of the international community. This concept came from the West, came from these big countries. The genie is out of the bottle, but since these are going to be legitimate tools to advance foreign policy of nation states. Remember, all countries in the world act in their own best interest at any given time. So this is a problem that is happening in Africa. Why isn't the West shouting about it? The West has been trying to write about and talk about what Wagner is doing. At least there's a lot of noise around that, and I have seen a lot of that happening.
Yeah, because it's Russian.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Where isn't there a deliberate attempt to literally outlaw them? Literally come up with international law that says, you know what, regardless of whatever you want to say, it is illegal for this to take place. Nobody wants to do it because it is not affecting their part of the world. It is in a different, distant third part of the world.
Because it works in their favor.
Exactly.
The permanent members of the UN Security Council, all of them have deployed some mercenary in one way or another in an operation. All of them are warmongers, so to speak, and they've definitely used them. They do not want to stop that, because they know how it works for them. We've seen the stories of Libya and what happened in Libya, even during those operations. Who were the boots on the ground? Nobody was in the boots on the ground. America didn't have people on the ground. You know, David Cameron had only sent warships by there. They were supporting, local people, because local people were agitating for their own local democracy and to remove the Libyan president. But were there foreign boots on the ground in Libya during that conflict? There you go. Everybody knows, yes, there were. Who were they? Who were they working for? Who was paying them? These are the people we are talking about.
Exactly.
So if they've been used for these wars, then...
Exactly. And Eric, the way you put it, they are a very convenient resource when you need them. You know your Congress, you know your Parliament, are going to take you through the ringer in trying to explain why do you want to send our soldiers to fight in a war that has nothing to do with us. You need this ready-made group of soldiers, let's call them that, or ex-soldiers, who have the training and the expertise, who can be called upon at an hour's moment. Money changes hands, and you give them a brief. This is what I want you guys to go and do. Go and do this for me. And there is plausible deniability. You hide behind your curtains of democracy. You hide behind your curtains of what's happening. So this is something that has been out there. That's true. And it is very convenient, and it's not about to go away anytime soon.
Is it likely to backfire, though?
It will backfire. Because, like we've seen, let's take Sudan as a case study. Janjaweed became legitimized by Bashir and became the Rapid Support Forces. They are better equipped. They are better equipped. They have better training than even the regular Sudan army. Right now, the fight between Dagalo and Burhan in Sudan is a power struggle between the two of them. And RSF has given the Sudan army a run for its money. It has the backing, it has the finances, it controls the gold sector industry, it has support from Wagner Group. You can see what has happened. A PMC, quote unquote, did whatever it did in Darfur, but now it is a clear and present danger to state security. So all these PMCs, wherever they are entrenched, whichever part of the world, and especially in Africa, they will grow a life of their own. They will become a clear security challenge, even when all is said and done for the security forces of that same country.
Okay.
Right now, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger can celebrate having them on their soil for whatever agenda that they have. But I can assure you, those PMCs will recruit even Africans into their enterprises. Those Africans are going to grow and become and challenge the legitimate military security apparatus of those countries. That is where we're headed. So eventually you'll always find there'll be this legitimate army in the country, and then there was this group that was helping us during our hard time. You'll start talking about integrating forces, and then problems will start arising.
The subversion of democracy can also almost be seen as a deliberate thing by external forces.
Correct.
Because here we are thinking that there is the employment of these PMCs by governments in Africa, for example.
Exactly.
However, I see it on the other side, that they're actually being pushed because, I mean, you have a business, you do the same sales and marketing like anybody else would do, and say, well, we have this operation that you can then use. I do believe that there's an external play here when it comes to the subversion of democracy, because you can thrive in a place whereby there's no
chaos.
rule of law and there's chaos.
Exactly, correct.
So you will then make sure that folks who seem to be in a desperate situation have this option, like a monkey on the shoulder.
Exactly.
And that they can pick up on it and use it. So there could be the subversion of democracy on an internal point of view, but I see a much stronger subversion of the very same thing coming from an external source.
Especially when minerals are involved. So ask yourself, why is it this subversion is occurring in mineral-rich countries, countries that have uranium, gold, diamonds, oil? So this PMC is a conduit, is a funnel. Go help them fight their own fights, and in the process, secure those mines for us. Start mining, protect those mines. Where does that extractive industry? If we can follow the minerals, we will understand exactly what you're trying to say about. So it is in someone's interest to subvert and make sure a certain particular area and region of the world does not get peace so that we can continue extracting those minerals. There you go. It's all about the money. So the PMCs are going to fulfill an agenda on one side, but they'll also help extract the minerals. There'll be a conduit through which a chain, a conveyor belt will just help to pillage and siphon our African resources out of the country. So follow the money trail, follow those, follow the minerals. Yeah. So the PMCs are here. They are, for lack of a better word, let's call them, they know who they are backing for. They know who has paid them.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Everybody looks at the Wagner Group and say, the very unfortunate helicopter accident that killed its founder. We
know exactly.
We know. So we know the owner of Wagner.
Exactly.
When we see all these other military groupings and whatever they are doing in Africa, in the DRC, and all these two conflicts, and these guys are using heavy artillery, and you don't know how they're getting. We can all see the likelihood that these are leaning on this life, right?
Yeah.
So we know where they're coming from. The question is, how can these be stopped?
Yeah.
Is there any private military contractor that is organic and authentically African?
Not to the best of my knowledge. I'm trying to rack my brain. I have not seen.
So the mercenaries that we are seeing, that we have seen over time, even by the time a son of a former prime minister of a country in the West was being accused of engineering a coup in Africa.
Yeah.
All these mercenaries
Yes.
are coming from somewhere else.
They're coming from, but they also recruit locally.
Of course, they're recruiting
They're
locally.
recruiting, but where's the paycheck being resigned
Exactly,
from?
that's the thing. Yeah, the paymasters, of course, are coming from outside there.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
So it's still just another continued
Exactly.
control.
It's a control. Think about it this way. Look at the resource extraction, in the mining industry. Think about the PMCs subverting democracy and helping to install or protect a leader who is wanted by a particular faction out there of the international community. Why? So that now we can get the contracts of that country, we can just continue pilfering. PMCs create an element of dependency. I know Ndu did this at campus, dependency theory, you remember?
Right.
How these advanced countries, developed countries keep developed countries dependent on them.
Latched on, essentially.
Yeah, latched on literally. We can give you aid and all these things. It is also part of that. If we can have your security sector dependent on us,
We have full control.
we have full control.
We basically are the sovereign of your country.
There you go. There you go. We decide, we call the shots on who's going to be the leader. Okay?
Who dies, who lives.
Exactly. Now, unfortunately, extreme case scenario, that is there you're going.
Yeah.
So it's all about how we're going to, it's another form of neo-colonialism. It's another form of controlling the economy of this country.
Okay.
PMC is just one nice, good route. We came to help you fight the jihadists.
Yeah.
But then,
No telling what
we
will do
noticed
outside
your,
France.
we noticed your,
We're here to stay.
we're here to stay.
Dr. Edgar Githua, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Githua is an international relations, peace and conflict researcher, and is also a security analyst. We've been talking about mercenaries in Africa, private military contractors, as they are known. It's 9 a.m. Time for the news.